Hope everyone's doing well. Welcome to the MAGIA Mindset. Today's guest has been a head coach at the NCAA Division One level. He has been an assistant coach at the NWSL level. He has also been an author, written books such as The Modern Soccer Coach. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome our guest, Gary Curneen. Roll the intro. Gary, thank you so much for putting in the time to join us. I know your schedule's super busy, especially with the unique 2020 we're having this year in the sports world, in the soccer world, in the football world. So thank you again.
No problem at all, Shawn. Thanks for having me on and excited to chat.
My pleasure. One of the main things I wanted to go on, you've done a great job with your series of books you've written on the modern coach. And I think it's sparked a lot of good dialogue between coaches in the States, internationally, all around. One of the main things I wanted to get in, who is the modern coach in your opinion?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I don't think I didn't write it. I certainly didn't write it that I was the modern coach. I didn't write it from an aspect of that there was one coach. I think invariably we're drawn towards the most successful coach of all time or at that stage. So, is it Guardiola? Is it Klopp? Like, yeah, they have those. I mean, I don't know them personally, or I don't know a great deal about them beyond what we see and what we're exposed to. But the way I would say it would be that it's not like I saw the game changing when I was going through coach education and things that I was being exposed to when I was 23, 24. I saw as being redundant at 26, 27. I thought, hold on a minute here, like should I be questioning this a little bit more? And then and that's just because the world was changing, and if it's changed so much and that was 2010, like that's 10 years ago, when the kind of wheels were started turning. I thought sessions have changed, people have changed, technology's changed, and the actual rules of the game have changed. So, there was things that the offside rule became a lot more blurry and allowed teams to do certain things. So, yeah, I think what kind of I always try and frame this as there's a lot of traditional coaching behaviors that we could actually go back, revisit, and we probably need to, in terms of the way maybe the quality of communication, maybe the personality of the coach was actually in a better position 15, 20 years ago. The ego of the coach has definitely soared over the last 10, 15 years. So not everything is positive, and not everything about the coaches that worked 10, 20 years ago was bad. It's just the fact that it's changed. And what I've tried to do is I've enjoyed the process of studying that, but I've also then tried with modern soccer coaches being to get people's experiences, and then also with promotion on social media has been keep looking at what Shankly stood for, look at what John Wooden stood for, look at what Cruyff stood for. Some things will never go out of fashion, and again, some things need to be brought back into fashion that was then. So yeah, just a roundabout way of saying we need to adapt, but then we also need to stay true to really, really good values that have also, I think, have been central to all the great coaches.
Gary, you touched on some key points. Ego was one of the main keys that stood out to me. I think in a coach, it's a unique platform that we have as coaches, that we can't be in that egocentric way, because if we think we know it all, if we think there is no more growth for us, we're the best, there's gonna be a hindrance in our coaching. And I think the coach that constantly is driven of knowing more, changing, adapting, growing. That's what I got from becoming that modern coach, because I think there is that tug of war we're getting in our coaching education here, as well as coaches that we work with, that because the license or the courses are saying build out of the back, you got to go this way, you got to go that way, it's robotic this way, that's the curriculum, you got to write it out. There is no thinking out of the box and saying, yes, we're trying to build out of the back. That's a great style of playing, but it doesn't have to be generic only this way. It can be this way as well. No coach is wrong. What would you say in a working world that we're working with? Let's say, let's take into the youth club world, and the director has certain ways that you want to coach, okay, but you want to kind of put your stamp on teams too. How does that coach obviously do what the director wants, but also put their personality and experiment to kind of see how their style of coaching is?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that I think it involves a very, very skilled DOC to be able to facilitate. Like, and again, like everything, it depends what do you want, and I think invariably what we want is, as managers or directors, is to have like at the youth level, is to have easily, not easy, but like readily systems in place that can actually, like, it's such a mass scale. Development is such a mass scale. I'm not saying that it's that's the priority, but I'm saying, like, from a management point of view, it's easier to put the curriculum in place, to tell everyone that we're going to play a certain way. And you've got Ajax behind you, so you've got certain once upon a time, some of these things were like, yeah, like Ajax was all 4-3-3, and that was only 20 years ago. But now, yeah, now that can actually be wrong, because you can go in and you can take certain things away. So I think is the philosophy of the club to actually to expose people to different things, and that would be my philosophy. I've studied the game enough to know that there is, like, and I went through a coach education system that was Monday 4-4-2, Tuesday 4-3-3, Wednesday 3-4-3, Thursday 3-5-2, Fridays psychology, boom, home on Saturday. And you go through that and you're like, all right, everything is positives, everything is negatives. So there isn't, if there was a right way to play, we would all have established that by now. I think there'd be smart enough people who would have identified that there. So what I'm trying to say is that, and Anson Dorrance on a couple of months ago, and I really agree with this, and I think especially here in the US and our culture, we should take it on board a lot more, is that, we keep thinking about getting everyone on the same page would be great, and I actually don't. Yes, within your micro environment, it is hugely important that Pep and Linders is on the same page as Jurgen Klopp, 100%. Does Pep and Linders have to be on the same page as Frank Lampard? No. Is that because if everyone then is reading from the same page, you're going to dilute, because everything has shortcomings, and you need diversity. You need people challenging. So I think in clubs, go and find, or if you want to go deep with it, find out who's going to push the players in certain, who's a bit more direct with their state of play, who's a great build-up coach, who's more of a developer, and work your coaches in that, rather than saying, okay, everyone works under this umbrella. That's a process, and that's the problem, is that the process is the hard part. I'm working with a group of coaches, 30 coaches a month at the minute, and I was yesterday's in a soapbox moment for me. Was be like, you're swimming upstream here, guys. Like, you want to play a brand of soccer, you want to have a centralized, like, build it around the player, and you want to work, and like, you're going against the grain. So you've got to expect, that's the actual hard thing to do. You got to expect criticism, you got to expect resistance, you got to expect the punches every single weekend, you got to expect the emails, but only if you want to. Now, you don't have to do that. You can just decide that I'm going to do what everyone else does, and sometimes that's a little lesser resistance. So it's all what the philosophy of the director is, or the boss, or whoever it is. But at the same time, if you want to go the direction of doing something different, I think we should be under no illusions that that's probably where we're going to get a lot more hassle. And sometimes we don't want that as an industry. Sometimes it's easier to get on Twitter and say, blah, 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 and that's not the way it should be. Things should be difficult, and that's no problem. And it's not the fault of relegation, or it's not the fault of promotion, or it's just we are working in a culture that's so diverse and so difficult, but that's a challenge as well. It's got a lot of opportunity with it.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at any successful organization, I think you just hit it. It's that creative director, it's that creative leader that's open. And I think what we keep realizing is the pure sign of confidence is when you're so secure with yourself, you don't need to step in. You trust everyone in their roles, in their positions. And I think the successful organizations that in the end, at any level, college, anything that won, there was a clear understanding from the top down. And that's sometimes the tug of war we get in US, I feel, because we have everyone from different countries. Everybody has a different view of the game because of culture. Nothing wrong with it. It's just culture. Someone from Ireland has a different view from Spain. Everybody has a different vision of it. And but we're in the US, so you have so many of that heads. So it kind of butts heads. I want to go into our next one. And I know I don't want to use the word proper, but because you can go so many ways, like we just talked about right now, because based on someone's culture, that still is a modern session. But in your opinion, what does let's say a modern game session, kind of you're preparing for that style of play, look like? What are the phases? Is it 4 phases? Is it 5? Is it broken in 3? Is there a warm-up, or there's only now you start off right off the bat in a 5v5 small-sided game, and then you throw some technical stuff in, or no dynamic warm-up needed, just jump into rondos? What is it that it kind of looks down, if you can break that down for us?
Yeah, sure. Again, my opinion is that, well, initially my opinion is it again depends what you want to do. I mean, you can go and do a maintenance job and rock up, do a 4v2 rondos, go into 8v6 with 2 side bounce players and go into a game. And you get no resistance at all. Players will enjoy that. But again, I think two things for me is, number one is I wrote in my earlier books about intensity, and I thought that we were, and this was 2013, 2014, I thought we were constructing the session completely wrong. We were going in warm-ups, building it up to higher tempo, and then by about an hour, 15 minutes, the thing's rocking, and all of a sudden you're wrapping it up 10 minutes later, and all the players are like, hey, we're enjoying this. Can we keep it going? And now I got to get off the pitch. So, and that's not the way the game's played, because, you say oh, we want to finish the game strong. Yeah, but that sounds great. But you want to start the game strong and finish it strong. You want to keep, that's got to be the level. So many teams, if you score first in the number of leagues around the world, you've got a greater chance of winning the game. So good starts are important. So would it not be better to? So I highlighted or I suppose pinpointed intensity from the get-go as a priority. And my recent experiences with the senior players has been that's not always the case. Depending on environment, depending on the day of the week, it's sometimes that the load management, and you can't go straight into it. You've got players that are uncomfortable because they've played 2 days before that, or because they've got another game coming up. So that taught me to be a lot more flexible. But what I would say is that the mental intensity of training, I think we should look at a lot more. So we've done I think we made a great growth in the past 5-10 years about looking at what's the metrics of load management and GPS, etc. But what are we exposing our players about? Chaos. The game is, you mentioned the 4 moments, and we would like the 4 moments to be organized possession, then this here, and then this here, and then this here. But it can be transition to transition to transition to organized possession to this to defensive organization, to defensive organization, to defensive organization, to defensive. You don't know when those moments are going to happen. So you've got to try and create a system where you're challenging the players that they can become comfortable when they get on Saturday. For me, the mental intensity is so important. So how you're trying to do that. And then second of all, I think the consistency. Actually, we talk about game realistic. Like, I'm not a big fan of that phrase. The phrase that I would use is consistency, almost like environment realistic. Like, is what you're doing right now, does that encompass everything you telling your players, your game model that you're putting up, the science that you're working through, the psychology messaging, the video analysis, everything. And I think when we're getting some great little hooks today, that when you do get a peek into what Liverpool are doing, or you get a peek into what City are doing, consistency in those environments it's just, there's no gaps. Everything that, the players, and then all of a sudden, what I think that does is that takes away from the reliance on the voice of the coach. And if you can then take away that, you can dial that down, because that's what I used to be loud. Everything was. Now I think the real value is the coach. If the volume goes down, it allows the players to speak a bit more and maybe come up and lead and do all that. But then you've got to then make that up with the consistencies around that and everything you're doing. And to me, that's quality. And you can do that in a different day, in a different environment, on different things. I think you can do it a number of different ways. So I don't think there's a right way or wrong way to coach or train. But I think if you look at, and that's what I try and do with my mentorship, is like, show me what you're doing, and I'll look at your language and I'll pick out little bits where two things, because I think social media puts us on we almost taken a scrapbook approach to game models, where I like the way Barcelona counter press, and I also like the way Atletico Madrid are in their defensive organization. So I want to counter press like Atletico Madrid, or counter press like Barcelona, defend like Atletico Madrid. And sometimes they can't go together. Sometimes Barcelona's counter pressing is so good because they build in their blocks and put 10 players higher up the pitch. And Atletico Madrid are so good defending because they don't do that there, because they can get players back. So like, you can't just pick and choose. You have to have a reason behind that, and you need people to pick at it. Otherwise, you're doing it yourself. And I've done it. Like, I've lived in a bubble as a coach and didn't make as much ground. I thought I was making ground, but now I'm on a different journey, and I look back and think, I wish I had been tested a bit more there. So I just think that's something that the mental intensity piece for me is important, and the consistency is important.
No, that's fantastic. I wanted to kind of, now, if we get into a specific, okay, let me just put you in a scenario. You've had a good break. Now, today's probably one of your more intense days, but it's also your scenario day. You're trying to paint a picture, because you know how your opposition looks. You know what their weaknesses are. You guys already analyzed that. You know what their strengths are. But you're trying to create that picture in your practice. You're trying to create that environment for them. And I want to go into, how do you paint that picture? How does a coach, let's say in the modern game, that you did your game analysis, you already know what you want to do. How do you get it off the television set, the laptop, the iPad, the whiteboard, and put it as your session? And then afterwards, they walk off, the players walked off, you walked off, you're like, we know what they're coming at us with. We know everything. We're ready. We're prepared. And coaches feel comfortable. The players feel comfortable. Because I know there's a lot of moments, there's a lot of coaches that what they prepared for, when they go and try to create that picture and scenario, now they're coming off, they're like, I don't know. We'll see tomorrow if we're ready. Players are like, if that's it, that's it. We don't know. But then they go into it and they're like, man, that didn't look like what we were preparing for. So if we can kind of talk into how to creating that would be great as well.
Yeah, I think I think the work outside the practice, regardless of what you're saying, like, or what the age group is, you've got a limited attention span when you're out there. Players, whether they're 25 or 5, would rather play than listen to a coach. So I think with that scenario that you're talking about, for you to take responsibility to go out there, set it up, talk through it, you're probably going to disengage a lot of people. And again, you're going to put yourself to the forefront rather than the game. So I think you've got to make sure that, you're getting your 10, 15 minutes in before the practice, and you're having a review process. Those two things, and those, like, they have to be practiced by a staff. I believe, like, that they need to be spot on. Then when you get out there, the players already have an idea of what the picture you're painting is, and then you can then start to put. And I think, I think it's a good. The two things probably go hand in hand, and what you're trying to do and what the opponents are going to try and do. So you're going to have to. And I think sometimes we just set the opponents up in a structure and then say it's a formation thing, but relatively, like, you don't naturally get. It's not a formation battle for me. Like on a Saturday, it's situations. So you're trying to maybe. So then it's just whether you're going to go. If it's 11v11, yes, some of it, but then you're going to have to go a little bit smaller. To try and create that scenario. But for me, like, I would be more, the plan's already been in place. So you don't want to expose players to the biggest challenge, which is this going to work or not? You don't want to, in my opinion, you don't want to expose that on Saturday at 3:00. You want to expose that on Thursday at 3:00. So where it may or may not break down. So your responsibility or role or whatever as a coach must be to say, right, well, did I, not to say like the session was perfect, it was good, everyone feels good. There probably is like, I used to be like that, but my philosophy is more, if the session was, and if it was that type of where you're like, there is a time to say that everyone walks away feeling good, session was clean, crisp, whatever. But for a session like that, I think people need to walk away saying, we're aware of this hole, we're aware of where we could get hurt here, we're aware of if this happens, we need to do that. So all of a sudden, that means rather than telling people it and saying, no, you have to be careful now, they could get us on the counter, rather than putting that up, you have to expose it in the session. And I think if you expose the weaknesses of what you're trying to do, then you've got an hour and a half possibly to work through it. And then that can continue, but it's in the players' heads. So like what you're saying, like the majority of plans, what's the phrase? Until you get punched, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Like, that's soccer. We have these beautiful game plans that go pear-shaped on a Saturday. So you have to, I think, now it's uncomfortable, but I think there, you referenced it before about the coach having all the answers. You go in and you have all the answers, then you're at a position where the players will go, have you thought of this? What about this? But if you have a situation environment where your role is to create them and to co-create them and help the players solve them and take them into ownership and leadership, then all of a sudden you can have a chat about this afterwards, and it's not all on you. And I think that's the thing about coaching today is, like, we see Pep and we see Jose on the sideline and we think, it's this great leader, and that it's the players. Like, now granted they're responsible for the environment, which is phenomenal, but it's the players that have to step up. Pep cannot, he might be able to do it now, there's nobody at the stadium, but you can't at the new camp, you can't jump up and shout everything that's going to happen. The game moves too fast.
Yeah, I mean, Gary, I totally agree with you. I think the game has evolved so much, and the coaches that realize in giving the game to the players are the ones that are more successful. Meaning, in the session, like you just said, players want to play, and you just create that environment. If it's make the dimension smaller, if you're making the field smaller and you're going into a 4v4 thing, but they got to play, because in the end of the day, when you think about the half of a game, is 45-minute half. How many times can you jump in there and keep freezing them? They're problem solving on the fly. They're picking out visions. I mean, sometimes the player is going to see a through ball that you as a coach didn't even see. But because you're letting them play and figure it out, they're able to see that. And it's kind of like parenting too. When you're telling them exactly to do everything you want to do, they're going to kind of resist. But when you kind of, hey, what do you like to do? What do you think? What do you want to do? What do you want to, okay, let's try that way. And you're helping them, literally guiding them there, but you're supporting them. That's, I think, a unique and a great balance. I want to kind of now transition. We're kind of talking about it from the sessions to the games. I want to know, how does let's say today's coach, as we're keep reminding it, the modern coach, specifically coach at different levels? I know it varies. Like, let's say college level, women and male, youth level in the States, EPL, Spain. I want to know, how does that coach really coach? Is it having to know who he is first, his coaching style, what is his philosophy, and then now from that bring it to the modern game? Or is it the other way around? And or is it, if you're at the youth level, you can't bring your philosophy and maybe, or your style, because you got to see who your players are, and then now you got to make your modern coaching your game based on that. And I want to kind of touch in, I know I've been going on several parts, but I wanted to also make it important. In a game, do we overcoach moments and talk to them a lot, or do we sit back and trust what we did in preparation as well?
Oh, I mean, I don't even think, like I said, I don't have an answer for that there. I would say, like, based on the experiences and based on what I've seen, I don't think that, as much as we would like to say that you would sit back and watch them play. I mean, I used to laugh at Clifton Bush, and I used to chat and say, all right, well, this is Division One, but our season was every game. Like, if you lose, like, was I going to get fired after losing 2 games in a row? No chance. But would the players then, would that impact our environment to be able to get a bit more buy-in? And then you start thinking, yeah, it is. So then you start thinking, right, well, what do I need? Like, what does when it comes college level and it becomes above that there, you're saying, right, well, what does the team need from me? And I suppose what I did was, I probably, in 2 ways, I set myself up with the environment that I was this. So the team needed me to be that on a Friday and Sunday. And I don't think that's right. I just think that's what it was. Now, granted, if I had sat down from minute one, don't think that would have got it either. But then you reverse engineer it and you go back now to the youth level. I think there's times where you do have to sit down, and I think there's times where you have to let them play. But then I go, like, what does the team need from me? I think at the college level, the game is so crazy. Like, it's Friday, Sunday, 3 months. There's no league like it. Like, we knock it a lot in this country, but I just think that it's a really unique experience, and something that we should probably celebrate, because there's nothing else like it. But it's absolutely, like, it's bananas. It's completely up the wall in terms of, like, people say, well, what are the subs doing on the sideline, standing up cheering? They have to. Like, they have to, because it's sub. It's all energy. And now you'd probably argue is like, well, you don't need energy all the time. Yeah, maybe not. But then the team does. That's the college culture. Look at March Madness. Look at college football. Then you go back and say, all right, well, would we like it to be a different game? Yeah, like, we'd love it to be sub sitting down, people being a bit more calculated about the game. Then change the season, then make it 12 months, then allow us to calm this, take the air out of it a little bit. So it's just what your team needs. For me, at the youth level, like, if I'm looking at a 10, 12-year-old, and I don't work in that space, but if I'm looking at that, I'm saying, like, yeah, I think what that player would need would be, like, I suppose, the permission to go out and do it, but then the support when that doesn't work. And that might involve, getting up and saying, hey, Susie or Johnny, brilliant, love it, love the idea. Or it might go up and say, hey, let's pick up the ante here. Let's pick this up a level. Or it might be just a collective as well, like squeeze, drop. So I think it's just a matter of, I think you can. There's no right answer, but there's plenty of wrong answers, I think. And I think that's the mistakes I've made in college, has all been, like, probably too much of Gary, rather than, like, can you let it drop a little bit? But as I say, the dynamics are pretty unique.
Yeah, I mean, college game is a different animal. I think if you want to put a coach in there to be testing his periodization, his coaching style in the game, his sessions of how he prepares, because it goes all against what the beautiful game, the most popular game in the world, actually stands for. It goes all against that. And coaches that come in that are the purists, it's hard for them. It's hard for them to go into that environment because they can't coach the way they want to. It's actually because the sport resembles the other American sports, but it's not an American sport. It's an international sport. So I totally agree with you. It's such a crazy thing. I want to transition from how you coach the game. What this podcast stands for is the mindset, because what I feel is we kind of touched onto it earlier on. The mindset is so valuable being at an elite level. Anything. You can be a coach at the youth level and you're still an elite coach. You can be at a professional player at any level. You have the elite mindset. I want to kind of talk to you. We talked about it, mental intensity. We talked about consistency in our sessions. But in addition to those, what are the key qualities of players that you've coached at your collegiate games, as well as coaches you've dealt with at the highest level? What sets them apart? What is it, the mindset that they have? What are the key qualities that you tell yourself, you're like, that's why he's there. That's why he's doing that. Because it kind of gives our viewers, what do I have to kind of start to pay attention to keep growing and putting myself in the right places mentally?
Yeah, I just posted a video today of Arsene Wenger and it was more Van Persie in an interview with like a high performance podcast with Robert Van Persie. It's an absolute electric interview, and it's just like what he's basically saying is that we're very judgmental today, which we are, and we are judgmental as coaches anyway, because we're basically educated with assessments, and then it becomes talent evaluation, and then it becomes picking for your team. So all of a sudden, you then have exposure to Premier League and all this here, and you start fantasy football. So we bring in that mentality towards our players, and we label them, and we say, all right, such and such is mentally tough, such and such is athletic, blah blah blah. And then all of a sudden, then when someone doesn't have something, we see it as our responsibility to identify that, oh, hey, by the way, you don't have this. And that's unfair to the player, because the player is, all these skills are all built. So you're just like, so basically Van Persie was saying, well, he showed me, he wouldn't give me the answer of why I wasn't at the level of Henry and Bergkamp, but he showed me where to look, and if I looked and I found it. And I think that is 100% coaching. Like, that's the gold standard. Rather than standing on a sideline and getting a win or 3 points, like having the patience to point, right, not to give the answer, and you know the answer. Now, another coach would say, well, that's what I tell my players every single week, and if that would be a red flag for me, because now you're saying that you've got that skill. So now the humility aspect is in question. So if you have to tell people that you're doing it, like, possibly not. So that's where, like, players, the senior players that I've worked with have this ability to self-manage and have the ability to, commit to their fitness, commit to their diet, commit to training, commit to focus every single day. And then as a coach, you're trying to get that 10, 15%. But if you, again, reverse engineer that as a youth coach, high school coach, college coach, like, well, how can I help create a player for the higher levels? Well, we should do this training session, this play, help them self-manage. How do you create a self-managed player? Well, you actually scale back your communication rather than telling everything, and you point it more to, I'll help you. Now, granted, there's some players that may not be interested to committing to that level, so you've got it, but I think that's what you have to do. And then mental toughness for me is nonsense. I have changed my perception of that there. It's all mental skills. Everything can be taught. And, some players have exposed to more setbacks at a younger age and all that there. So they're going to be wired differently. So maybe maybe you're going to get a high level talented player at 17, 18 who's never had setbacks. Life has gone so smooth from a soccer perspective, but now you have to change as a coach to, like, you can't just throw on a, throw up a setback there. You have to be able to manipulate that situation positively and manage it and all that there. So I think coaches now, and again, I'd like humility, because you have to put the player above you in terms of where you're trying to move it. It's not about being right. It's about trying to help the player. And go back to Arsene Wenger, could easily tell the answer, but he wants to shift. So humility is important, but also like that patience aspect. And then finally, like, just building, like, viewing mental skills as something that you can work on rather than something that, this whole thing. Social media is brilliant, but then it's also got a lot of negatives. Like with players, same with game models. Like I want a profile of these players in my team. All right, you've just described Real Madrid. So unless you're going to coach Real Madrid, you're going to have to develop some of these skills. But that's not as glossy as a lovely thing you've just posted. So where are you going to start? And that's where, like, it's a hard, again, back to the thing we talked about way before. It's every single day. It's easier to give people the answer. And I've done it for years and been frustrated. And now I realize that's definitely why I was frustrated. I was just handing out the answers. To put your environment where you're actually, nudging them and guiding them, that's a different thing. It can't just be questions. It can't just say, go find it out for yourself. Can't do that either. You have to be skillful in doing it. And that's where I think coaching should be beautiful in that sense. It should be building your skill set. It should be helping them build their skill set, not just technically, but mentally as well. I think that's where we can all really, really enjoy it.
No, I mean, Gary, I think as much as we're revisiting social media, I think social media has a lot of positives, but it does have a lot of negatives. And the reason is because when people see it, maybe the new coaches, the naive coaches that keep coming in, they see that, man, Klopp and his assistants are getting the iPad out and going like that. I got to bring the iPad for my U10s, but the U10s look at the iPad, they're like, what is that? How do I go from this? Sometimes we got to know the environments we're coaching too, and the sessions we're setting up. Maybe we do have to simplify. We do have to go more old school for the younger ones, and then modernize it for as they get older. Maybe there's got to be phases within it. But I think the social media, because it looks so clean on there, we want to go exactly the way Liverpool set it up for their senior team for U12s, but it doesn't make sense.
There's levels. There's levels. Like, you can't, everyone now is analysis. Like, I send the clips to the players. Like, it's not the same as analysis. Like, so again, I completely agree with you, Shawn. But for me, it's like, well, what's the biggest obstacle here? And for me, it's the humility to say that, you actually do it a better way than I do. Maybe I should take a step back and learn. But at the minute, like, a lot of things that I see online are like, yeah, we do that as well. Oh yeah, I say that too. Yeah, but step back. If it was that effective, then we'd all be posting videos of you. And that's where I made a big mistake, but like, the mistake that I've made with social media, that I'm trying to go the other way now, is like, I'm trying not to put this perception of myself as having all the answers. Like, I think we should be encouraging looking at other places within the game as well, like, and just highlighting people that are doing good stuff and going taking a look at it. That's where, like, that's my attempt at challenging the humility of coaches. Like, it's I think I do think if we see something at the higher level, it should be, like, I want one of those as well. But realize that it's not just a case of getting the iPad, like, it's what you do with it.
No, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. It's kind of, now that it's perfect that we're kind of touching on it, but going to the higher level, I think, and if I leave any of the names out, two names just keep popping to my head when you tell me modern coach. If I name anything out, you can include it in the mix as well. But the Pep and Klopp, I think, my opinion, Pep actually created, from Johan Cruyff, that whole modern transition from that 2008 I can be wrong, 2012 Barcelona team that literally I think changed the game. If they didn't win anything, maybe we don't go in this direction. I don't know, winning, but they did win it in that style. And then Klopp obviously takes it to a different level with Liverpool. If we can talk about the Pep versus Klopp modern coach game, and if I included anyone that should be in that mix, you can include it as well. What is it that makes them unique? What is it from your eye that you're watching from the outside in that you're seeing that allows these coaches to be revered and so successful playing the style they are playing? And what is unique about their style?
I think the leadership style is charisma. Like, you know, as much as we all, again, like these coaching, like you you can walk into a room and have an effect on people, and you might have done coaching for 15, 20 years, and I might have done it for it might be the other way around. I might have coached for 20 years. You might have coached for 1 year, but you have the ability to walk into a room and everyone goes, this behavior, and they start looking around and taking a bit of notice. And I might walk in and they might just keep eating their dinner or reading their book or whatever it is. That puts you at a much higher level. And we don't talk about that there. And we talk about, well, why has Pirlo got the Juventus job? And he very may well have an ability to get people's attention. Like, why is people's attention so important? Well, if it wasn't so important, then companies wouldn't be paying billions to get people's attention every single day. Like, it's a currency that we're severely undervaluing. So for me, when I look at those two, they do it they got the charisma, but they also do it from a relationship-based approach, which, again, I don't claim to know anything about Guardiola or Klopp, haven't been in their company, don't know a lot of people who work with them, but just based on the observations that I see charisma, but I see it coming from a place where it can actually impact people, where they're reaching out to people. And to me, two of those things are outliers. Like, two of those things are, sometimes you see coaches and they're standing up like this here, and you see this tense person and nobody would go near them. Sure, why would they be successful? And then the other thing then is like the ability of the detail, and not just the detail of, like, because sometimes I think we look at it and again, we assume that all these complexities and that there, everyone's ability to commit at 100% in every moment of the game. Like, how do they get there? We don't really know, because we're not in those environments. But you are. Like, I watched the Liverpool game. I went back and watched last night, flew through it, and I was looking for a couple of things in defensively. Talking, like, you're looking at the gaps between. You're looking at the pressure, like, and it's real pressure. And then you look at when a Man City goalkeeper has the ball, and you look at people just taking a position, and it's not jogging in or casually going. Back to the thing on Twitter, we do that as well. Like, when our keeper builds, we're in a 3-5-2. Like, yeah, are they sprinting at the rate that those guys are? Probably not. Like, oh yeah, we counter press aggressively when we lose the ball. Oh yeah, or is there 5 players around the ball within a 20-yard space? Probably not. And you're saying, like, oh yeah, sometimes I've got a picture of that there. All right, well, let's watch it for 30, 40 games. And the intensity and the consistency of them doing that there, for me, blows the roof off it. So, like, that's the only thing that I would be comfortable in saying, like, that's what makes them different, is this almost the movie star approach to the every time they're in press conference, like Pep Guardiola, like the Amazon series on Pep. Like, he was like an actor. Every time he's in front of the team, the lights are on, and you can say, oh, he's playing up to the cameras. He should be playing up, but he knows that's important. Same with Klopp. Every time he's in front of the camera for an interview, you all of a sudden, you stop scrolling and you press play because you want to hear what he has to say. And for me, that's something that we could learn a bit from, I think, when we're looking at what coaches can make impacts.
No, I mean, that was funny. I wasn't even thinking about charisma and entering the room and just having that aura when you're walking there. I think I had an interview with Yale. She said the same thing about Anson. It's like
Yeah.
Anson would sometimes a couple times showed up late to the session, but when he pulled up and drove, everybody knew that the tone of the session just changed when he stepped in. And I'm like, that is an it. And I don't know if you can really develop that or something. That's something that certain coaches have a higher level of the charisma factor. It's a natural, I think, personality. It's kind of like going to a party. You're like, oh man, it's the tone of the party just changed. Where it's, you know, and
I've watched Anson, same thing as Yale saying. Like I've watched him walk through a convention hall or a convention center, and he's on his own, and you're like, you know, you feel the energy, like you feel that there's something about, and that it can draw people in. It also can lead them to like they become fascinated by those people. But they like energy, people. Like it's about energy. It was about energy 15, 20 years ago. It's about energy now. And we talk about objectivity. Like you can play a style of game, the exact same formation, all this here, but the energy and the feeling and the spirit in it, that is something that like, and that's it's a completely different podcast. How could you get that? You would need to get it. You'd need to be an actor. You need to be able, but like, could I go learn all of De Niro's words and go and act in a De Niro movie at the same? Like, not a chance. No chance. You need some things that, or you need to be good at some things, and those, and but again, you don't have to be Pep. Like there's other man like Scott Parker was on the other day, and there's I don't know anything about him. Don't know, he might have unbelievable charisma, but just the humility in that their interview was like, oh, okay, everyone's going to follow you because of the way you're talking. But those things are something, Shawn, that we need to be looking at as a coaching community, because like when you go into these environments, these senior players, they're not looking for knowledge. They know they've got the knowledge. They're looking at other things, and those are the aspects where, you know, again, we're in this quest for being the smartest person in the room, and that's not what it's about. Like, yeah, their intelligence level goes up there with Klopp and those people, I'm sure, but that's only the start of what their qualities are, I would say.
No, I mean, Gary, it's so fascinating at the higher level, because the players are mainly so developed mentally, physically, that you're a people manager. You're managing your staff, you're managing your players. And it's funny, even a segment we had with a previous guest, we're talking about a coach that came in, berated the coaches in the coach's office, but when he went to the players, had the biggest smile on their faces and taking them in, and no one knew what happened there, and the players loved them. And because the smile was like beautiful, charming, charismatic. But I think those are key qualities of the coach that goes more important than X's and O's, especially at those levels. Your managing skills, your communication skills, your delivery, your timing of delivery. No, but that was brilliant. So we want to kind of bring it full circle, but have a little fun with it as well to get to know you a little bit more. Is kind of give you 3 questions, and you don't have to be forced to only pick 1, 2, and it doesn't have to be in the particular sports field of the game we're talking about. But obviously, you've been involved with it so much that usually it tends to go in this direction. But we want to know your favorite team of all time, your favorite coach of all time, and your favorite player of all time. And then kind of the reason I say I don't want it to restrict it, because I want to know, how did this come about to become your favorite coach, player, and team of all time?
Yeah, so my favorite player, I'll start with the easy one. My favorite player of all time is Diego Maradona. Like, a player's never been coached, incidentally. I would guess the coach has never made a massive influence on him. Similar to the second favorite player, which was George Best. But like for me, Maradona, when I was growing up, you know, mid 80s, early 90s, he was the main man. But also, like, I think his ability to carry a team, his ability to do, like I even watch videos of him now. I just love, again, the like if you've seen the movie, I mean, he walks, like there's so much pressure on this kid. He was 5 foot nothing, broken leg in Spain, career at the doldrums, and goes to Italy within the worst team and the tough Italian league. Maradona's unbelievable. The favorite team of all time. I mean, I was a massive Manchester United fan, but my favorite team of all time, my first, like probably the Brazil team of 1994 to 1998. And there's a couple of teams in that there. That was like, it was Romario, Bebeto were kind of phasing out. And then Ronaldo, Denilson, Juninho were phasing in, Roberto Carlos. And I think that era of football was like, it was amazing. Dunga was part of both teams. And I could tell you, like, I could name me 3 Brazil teams in that there, no problem. So I love the way Brazil approach soccer. I just think is just beautiful. It's just such a refreshing way to see the game. Like, entertainment and joy is part of their DNA. And it's definitely not the case when you see a lot of other cultures. Favorite manager of all time would probably be Sir Alex Ferguson. Would be because of one thing. Well, 2 things. Number one, I was a United fan and started supporting them in '86 when he just got there. Didn't really know what was going on until about '89, where I realised that they never won anything, and then all of a sudden he was almost out. Took him 6 years to win something. It probably wouldn't happen today. But I respect or appreciate him more now. And one of his interviews I saw about a year ago was when he was getting like Coach of the Year, FIFA Coach of the Year award, whatever, 2000, whatever. And he said that is like a Manchester United team should always try and win the game. And I thought that's where, like, that's almost the beauty in his downfall with the Barcelona team of, I think it was the 2012 Champions League, where like he almost tried to win that game against a Barca team that he just had no business trying to take on at all. But that's who he was. And so I've like, now I'm getting older, I'm getting drawn towards people who are almost just, hey, I am like, this is what I love and this is what I'm about. And if you don't, so I would say Alex Ferguson and Bobby Robson, who I was never an England fan growing up, but someone who I only appreciated when I started studying coaching. And again, this like enthusiasm, this is who I am. And you watch, like if you watch his Netflix, like you just smile, or again, you're drawn towards him because he values people, he values the way of playing, he values relationships, he values communication. You're like, this is just a good person. So that's who when I look at it, like a very 90s for someone who preaches modern soccer coaching. Like mine's is all driven by that. Even if I'm a bit fed up with the game, some days I always stick on a 90s DVD, not DVD, get on YouTube and watch 94 World Cup or Maradona clips. Like that's my go-to. Like that's kind of triggers the joy and then passion about it again.
No, I mean that's fantastic. I mean, Bobby Robson, I love Bobby Robson. I think if you had to tell me a coach that reminds me of Bobby Robson's charisma is Klopp. I think the way he talks about players, like Bobby Robson, the way he would talk about Ronaldo phenomena, what he would do, how he would dissect it. He was so passionate, like it was his own kid. Like that's how I think Klopp, and you just get drawn to that. And I think that's a different level of charisma, that it's just, he's talking like he's a little kid admiring it, where he's actually the professor of the team. You know, he's the teacher of the team. But you see an older gentleman like that can be so pure and humble, and to talk about it in that fashion, you get drawn to it. It's and even going to Maradona is funny. I actually started to take the game serious based on my uncle from Iran bringing a Maradona documentary. I tried to imitate his celebration. I tried to score goals with my hand. The thing I loved about Maradona was his interview. He had the audacity to say, "Did you score with your hand?" He's like, no, it wasn't my hand. God reached out. He scored it because he wanted Argentina to beat England for what England. so
Uh,
just what he said is a player of the street. Obviously, a lot of English won't like that because, and it's funny because that's an example of lower class street player compared to someone in the white upper class that was kind of raised in structure that they're like, no, that's a cheat. But they look at it as what? That's cheeky. That's clever.
yeah.
That's clever.
There's a great what do you call it? There's a great, like, there's a book. He was like living in poverty in Argentina, slums of Buenos Aires. I think he went to the bathroom, like their outdoor bathroom one night, and he fell into the pit where, everyone dumped all their, and he nearly drowned in it.
Wow.
And he viewed that there as almost like that is the tale of my life. Like I'm in it and I'm pulled out, and all these interviews, like, he's always talks about no one's experienced the highs that I've had and the lows that I've had. And there's a great documentary. Don't know if you've seen it. It's all pieced together on YouTube. You can find it very when Maradona meets Lineker, and Gary Lineker goes to meet him, and it's so funny that, like, Lineker was like, when I grew up in Northern Ireland in the 90s. Like, Lineker was a legend. So Lineker, match of the day legend, whatever he is now, like, legend. He's gone to Argentina just to interview him, and Lineker's excited. Lineker was the top scorer in that World Cup. He's excited, but the funny thing is, Lineker goes to see him, and he's living with his mum lives with him, and he knocks on the house, and the guy that's kind of one of his friends is just like, yeah, he's not up yet. Can you come back at 1:00? And Lineker's like, yeah, no problem. I'll be back at 1:00.
Oh man!
Like, you're like, I mean, if Gary Lineker knocked on my door, he wouldn't be. And I said, yeah, I'll be back at 1:00. You'll be all right. He wouldn't be like, all right, I'll come back. Yeah.
No, that's
Different class.
No, that's different class right there. I think as brilliant and a legend Lineker is, there's a different, like, tables of levels to levels to levels. And look, I think Messi, one of my favorite players growing up is Ronaldinho, but I think Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo, just amount of time they've done it, it's brilliant and it's fantastic. But when you dissect, for me, when you go deep into Maradona as an individual, and I know the game is evolving, and yeah, Messi's fantastic, everything. But man, if you want to keep writing movies of Maradona's life, of what he went through, the roller coaster, off the field, on the field, who he was, not afraid of anyone, Fidel Castro. I mean, the stuff they found in his room with him, and then he goes and performs on the field, what he would do back in the day with the lack of technology and sports performance. Like I said, there's geniuses, and he's got to be up there with the Cruyffs, with the Messi's, the Ronaldinho's. But I don't know. I mean, you would even say if Maradona was better, maybe structured environment, or at a certain point, maybe in today's game with the science behind it, can he play longer? It's kind of like, to me, when you
Sorry, Shawn. What's interesting for me is that, talking about today's game, and you've probably seen the Netflix show on him. We're talking about these technicalities of coaching, and that, like, he's probably not even at the training sessions. He's coming on to the, you see the players. Like, that was my thing. Like, the Netflix show was hilarious, but more in the sense of, he rolls in. He's probably not been seen for 2 days, and the players are just like this. And his ability then to connect, like, all right, so you have their attention, and it's like, I don't think, like, I think if Michael Jordan walked into like that stature, walked into a basketball team and didn't actually follow it up, like, people would get bored of it. So I don't think it's just the fact that he is Maradona. I think that you have to then, once you get people's attention, same as Klopp and Pep, Maradona's coming in every day, and those guys were like, one of those players, I think it was the goalkeeper, got after he left, got a tattoo of him on his leg. You're like, that's how much. How many? Talk about coaching. How many players today would get a tattoo of their coach? And yet Maradona will never go down as even a good coach, not even a great coach. Never say, nah, he was never a good coach. And like, no, he might have had the ability to impact people differently than what other people impact. And to me, like, that's so interesting.
Man, when you have a country put a church after your name, I mean, it's something else, man. It's they view him so differently there. I mean, he is a symbol, and that's the reason I love the game, because there's stories within stories, and when you dissect everyone's documentary, there's nothing fascinating than this game, because every country has a different element, different style. You can like this one, you can like that one, so. It's been brilliant, and thank you so much, Gary. I mean, this interview has been great. I mean, you being on the show, the dialogue has been very good. I've really enjoyed it. What I want to kind of do on our behalf is what we do for our guests is let you close us out, and kind of share with you what you have going on in the game, so audience can be aware of how they can kind of be connected in some way, to develop in some way. So yeah.
First of all, thanks for having me on, Shawn. Really enjoyed it. It's always good to chat to people who are really, really passionate about the game, and keep up the great work. Well, I do a lot of stuff on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Gary Curneen is my handle for all of it. The podcast and Modern Soccer Coaching, and the website. I've got a lot of stuff on the website, all the stuff that we've done through the lockdown with all the webinars, and then some new things as well. If you go to modernsoccercoach.com and go to the latest tab, it's got a lot of stuff in it. So yeah, really appreciate you having me on, and really enjoyed the chat. We'll have to do it again.
Fantastic. Our pleasure.